when I say training is like three different phases in jiu-jitsu. There's drilling. You know the old saying, drillers make killers. You got to drill. No one likes to drill, but you got to repeat the move over and over again. Then you have resisted drilling, where now your partner is giving you a little hard time. Maybe not all out, but he's basically making life difficult. So now you have to do the drills against the resisting opponent, but only partial resistance. Then there's situational grappling, where you'll pick a particular position on that day and just keep working from there and then go live. Maybe you'll keep going after you get out of the position, but you go back to the position. And then there's free sparring, where you just both start neutral on your feet or on your knees. You need all four of those to get really good. All four. And when I say 60%, you want to try to only use 60% of your strength at all times. But there'll be times where the guy's better than you, faster than you, stronger than you, and you may have to use a little bit more. And that's the good thing about being as strong as possible, because 60% of a really strong man's effort might be 100% of mine.
Turns out Smitty's 60% is 100%.
It would be 100% of mine too. So technique will only take you so far. You need all of it, the whole shebang. And it also depends the kind of gym you're in. A lot of gyms like competition. I'm in a more self-defense oriented gym.
Yeah.
Guys, there's two types. There's yielding and overcoming isometric. The yielding, you're using a measurable weight for time, and you just go until you can't hold it. And then the overcoming is you're pushing against a strap, a chain, or some immovable object where there's no possibility of moving it at all. And it's good to include both. A classic example that they use in a lot of fitness classes would be the wall sit or wall seat, some people call it, or in martial arts, the horse stance for time. That's, a lot of karate striking styles, they hold horse stances. Freaking brutal, man. Or you can go halfway down in a push-up and just hold it for time, like the mid-range. You can get an unbelievable workout doing that. You could get into the power cage and lift a barbell up against the pin and hold it there for time. As soon as you make a certain time, you could increase the weight for the next time. So that's another way you could do it, with a barbell against the pin. You could be rowing, overhead press, incline press, bench press, whatever. A squat, a deadlift, you hold it against the pin in the mid-range, and you can give yourself, that way at least you know exactly how much effort you're putting into it.
So go ahead, Smitty.
Well, I was just going to ask about one of the things that I've seen in our school, and I've gone to another school, is where someone who lifts or someone who strength trains, they'll come in and we ask them to do a drill or a technique. And when they start utilizing their strength more than technique, because that's what they feel comfortable with, because they come from a strength training background, they'll hold their breath to get the effort out, right? Yeah. Let's say they're bridging, or they're trying to get their hooks in, or whatever. They're trying to get off their back. They'll take a big breath, hold it, and then, max effort trying to move, when that's sort of the opposite of what you should be doing with jiu-jitsu. You should be breathing and constantly breathing. Can you talk a little bit about that? How people...
Well, that brings me back to isometrics again, because if you think about it, isometrics are, grappling is basically a whole series of isometric holds.
Wow.
Flow, hold, isometric, flow, hold, isometric. And if you hold your breath, you'll get really exhausted. And it can be dangerous because you really spike your blood pressure when you hold your breath during isometrics. So isometrics in the gym teach you to breathe in jiu-jitsu. And the breathing technique is, I'll hold the camera close to my face, but you breathe in through the nose. It's like continuous little short breath. And sometimes it's like that. And sometimes you'd hear, like when you have a lot of pressure in your chest, you leave the air out in little bursts. So there's all these different breathing techniques that people use. I used to think that Hoist was making fun of me, when you do that kind of stuff. I used to think he was like teasing me or making fun of me because it sounded so freaking weird when he was doing stuff. Then I understood it later,
Yeah.
Once he taught me about the breath component. But yeah, breath control is really, but that's another reason I like isometric. It teaches you to breathe while under tension. And the worst thing you can do is hold your breath. A lot of guys will say, "Oh my God, I'm so out of shape." They'll be, bah, bah. It's like, no, dude, you just have to learn how to breathe, man.
Right.
Yeah.
You're in great shape. You just have to learn how to conserve your breath. You're basically exhausting yourself by robbing yourself of oxygen.
Well, you have a whole series on breathing on your website. You have all these programs that people can purchase that go deeper into all these aspects we're talking about. And the breathing was something that was very unique and something I've always kind of looked into. But have you looked at all these things with the mouth taping? Have you gone into any of that research or any?
Yeah. No, I studied the Buteyko breathing system, and I tape my mouth every night. I think it's really, really good. A lot of people that have had nose damage, and a lot of fighters have had deviated septum from getting busted in the nose or broken nose. It's really important to make sure that you do not mouth breathe at night. You want to get that tape over the mouth. Make sure your mouth is sealed so you're forced to nasal breathe, especially when you're sleeping. But yeah, I use that. Now, I do various breathing exercises, but the most important thing is don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Short little breaths. I mean, it doesn't have to be real complex.
Yeah.
Some people make it really more complicated than it needs. You don't need Wim Hof or any of that stuff. You just need simple. Wim Hof works, but it's more to endure cold. It's not the best way to do jiu-jitsu.
When you're talking about isometrics and you were referencing the research, you said 90 seconds. Does your training isometrics pretty much look like you're mimicking the research, or are you still doing slow eccentrics, slow concentrics? Are you doing any barbell work or any concentric work?
I make it up sometimes,
Yeah.
I still like to do really slow chin, 10 seconds up, 2-second hold, 10 seconds down. Sometimes I like to go 30 seconds up.
Oof.
30-second hold, 30. Try that sometime. Brutal. I like that slow, high tension training because it teaches you to breathe under tension.
Yeah.
And it's really good for old man joints. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't hypertrophy." That's bullshit. You can. I've started plenty of beginners on this type of training. Of course, once you've been training for about 5 years, you're not going to see a whole lot of gains anymore after,
Yeah.
pretty, here and there. Maybe if you stop training for a while, you'll see like a little bump up and whatever. But
Yeah.
the most part, after 5 years, what you see is what you get. And then you're just trying to hold on to what you built over the lifetime. That's what the situation I'm in. I just like to try to hold on to the strength that I built.
Well, I remember 20 years ago, you were actually doing those pull-ups at the seminar we did where you were doing the super slow pull-ups, but you were inhale, exhale as you moved up through the pull-up. And then, or I think it was a chin-up, whatever. But then we went into, you remember the gymnastics area? I don't know if you remember, but we went over there and you were actually doing goblet squats in the same manner, push-ups in the same manner, where there was two techniques you were showing. You were inhaling small bursts, exhaling small bursts, going down through the push-up, very slow push-up, and then back up, which was even more brutal. But the other thing you did was some type of hypoxic training where you would inhale, exhale, let your air out, hold your breath, and then however many push-ups you could do, and then do your recovery breath, which was more like a rapid inhale, exhale until you
yeah,
recovered.
I mean, there's a million drills like that. It's all good stuff. I'll still get into that now and again. But that's kind of simplified my training pretty much now that I'm at the age I'm in. I mean, I'm not going to build anymore. My days for building are over. So, as you get in a different phases of your career and ages, you start to adapt. And you find that, some things don't work so much anymore. Some things aren't quite as important as they used to be,
Right.
But, I mean, all that was really excellent type of training.
Yeah, and you're talking about it in terms of aging population, but where I am thinking about the application for my business, I run a training studio and we get a lot of athletes, and the benefit is primarily our goal is to keep those athletes healthy. And, any coach, and I'm sure you've observed this, you look at athletes and especially healthy ones, they're the ones who are subjecting themselves to the overtraining because they are healthy. And, I'm training someone I was telling Smitty, a military selection school, and he's working on obviously push-ups and pull-ups and running, and most of those guys show up at selection already overtrained and on borderline injured already because of their training. And he is working on push-ups. It's like it's interesting because if you took him and watched a 30-second set of push-ups, there's almost less metabolic effort being done in that 30 seconds than if he was to do a 20-second hold. There's just, like you said, so much momentum.
Because the goal is to get good at the exercise.
Yeah.
Basically, the goal of weightlifting is to lift as heavy as possible, as easy as possible. You want to make it as easy as possible. When you're doing selection type stuff, you want to make the pull-ups and push-ups as easy as possible. But when you're training for a sport or to get stronger or more hypertrophy or increased strength, you want to do everything as you can to make the exercise as hard as possible. No momentum, good smooth changes of direction. You want to make yourself work as hard as humanly possible. So it's a different paradigm. But to get good at a selection test, you pretty much got to practice the selection test the way they're going to test you. But here's the thing: they don't need to do huge volume to get good at that.
Yeah.
I've taken people through selection, and I had them really only training a couple times a week. They're going to get beat to death during the selection process. But if you try to beat them to death before they even get there, they're going to show up already in an overtrained state.
Yeah.
So, you just get them really good at doing push-ups and pull-ups and runs and sit-ups or whatever else they're going to be involved. I was very proud. I got a guy who was in his 40s. He's the oldest guy ever to get through the FBI HRT fitness test and be selected for HRT, the FBI hostage rescue team. And we kind of cheated a little. He found out exactly what the test was going to be, and we practiced that test as close to test conditions as we could. And he would do that once a week. And then he would just practice basic pull-up, push-ups, sit-ups, and running during the week, and lunges. The guy was super fit, but not overtrained, real fresh. And when he went in there to the selection, the training, he was selected, the oldest guy ever.
Wow.
Nice.
But we didn't try to duplicate, the actual Navy SEAL or Ranger school conditions. They're trying to make you quit.
Yeah.
Trying to make you cold, hungry, sleep deprived. They want to see what you got mentally.
Yeah, this kid is training for SEAL school, so he's got a lot to go. But it's
just the cold water, man.
I know. Do some cold plunges and then rest up. It's such a good point that you made, that the exercise should be hard, and this has always been part of the problem with a lot of the higher intensity training gyms now, like CrossFit. Even when you breed the exercise with the sport, you're kind of missing the point of the exercise, in my opinion. And
well, they're trying to make exercise into a sport,
right?
Like every workout is like selection day,
Yeah.
And I get it. I mean, being a former extremist myself, I could see the appeal, but it's not really a good model for training for other sports. Absolutely. Right. I mean, there's guys that get away with it. You're always going to find an exception to the rule, but the vast majority of guys that have tried to use the CrossFit model for Jiu Jitsu usually crash and burn fairly quickly over time.
Yeah.
Same guys that try to use the strongman approach or try to use the Olympic lifting or powerlifting approach.
Yeah.
Better off doing something pretty minimal and spend the majority of your time getting those skills down. That's the key. It's a skill-based sport. So the majority of your time should be spent working the skill of the sport. And that in itself takes energy. And then, obviously you're going to need to strength